Alright, so I already did some other Red Hood videos, the Red Hood mask, and guns and holsters and things like that. But today I made this knife, and I'm going to show you how I did it. Alright, let's get to it. Alright, so the first thing here was I needed to devise a pattern. And I based this off several things. A couple of different designs I've seen in the comics. But the main thing was I saw a drawing on Pinterest where the Red Hood was holding a knife like this, downwards, with its mask in the background, and it said it was from Detective Comics, but I've never actually read that issue or seen that image until I found it. And that's what it's based on. And I mean, there's a lot of Red Hood comics from pre-New 52, New 52, and Rebirth that I haven't read. I read a lot of the New 52 stuff and some of the pre-New 52, Under the Red Hood and things like that, but I don't recall a knife looking exactly like this. I modified it a little bit from the image I found online. But to make this pattern, all I did was freehand draw it on some paper and then put duct tape on the back to make it a little more sturdy so I can trace it out. And I will take a photo of this and put it up on the Facebook page. So if you want, you can download that and print it out and size it and change it, shape it, do whatever you want to it. And next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to trace this out twice, once this way and once this way, onto some 5mm thick EVA craft foam. Alright, so like I say, traced it out twice. And you can still see the faint line here from where I traced it out with the pen. I cut it at an angle on each piece so that whenever I eventually glue them together, they're going to already have somewhat of a point to them. Somewhat. I'm going to continue to shape this by hand sanding and using a Dremel, but that'll just help start it all off. Alright, so one thing I'm going to want both for shape and for stability is something running through the center of this. And I found this laying on the ground at my work. I thought, I'm going to pick this up after work. And then somebody just went ahead and stuck it to the hood of my car. Because initially this was a suction cup toy arrow from a toy bow and arrow set. I'm going to glue this in between the two. Put it in the center, put it in place with super glue. And then around the edges here, I'm going to put contact cement and put these together, which will give the blade some curvature and shape as well as the handle. And will also give it some stiffness so it's not so floppy. Alright, so I used some super glue to glue this in place. And I put another bead of super glue on top. And I used some sandpaper to rough up this plastic first, just to help it sit better. And you'll notice all this stuff on the edges here, that is contact cement. And you apply that to both surfaces to be glued. And now I'm going to glue this on top of this. Alright, here it is now that I've glued it all together. And I like doing this method because it gives it an extra little bit of depth and dimension that I don't have to grind into it with the Dremel. This backside edge here, I am going to sand it, but not too extreme. However, this front edge, I'm going to deepen this angle a whole lot. And I'm going to do that using the Dremel, starting about here and going in pretty decently. And you don't have to do this with the two pieces. For example, if you have a thicker piece of EVA foam like this, you could just cut the pattern out on it and sand down the edges and be done with it. But I still feel like it comes out a little flat. And this one gives you a nice little bit of extra depth. Alright, so there it is after some dremeling. Now, what I started off with was a sanding wheel, and that's for the bigger areas. But to get the final little edge on it and even everything out, and also for these smaller areas that are hard to get into, I used the small grinding tip, and that really helped to even everything out. Next, I'm going to take and blast this with some heat so everything is nice and sealed. And there it is after the sealing. Sealing, yeah, makes it a little shiny. And part of that is because whenever you run a heat gun over this, what it does is it causes the porous foam to seal up and gives it a much smoother and shinier appearance. This also helps a lot whenever you're going to seal the prop, because whenever you're sealing it, the more the foam itself has contracted, the less it's going to absorb, and the quicker you're going to be able to seal it and then paint it. Next, I'm going to go through and draw a pattern for the guard here, and I'm going to do that by placing this on a paper and tracing the shape of the base and then drawing out my guard. Alright, so I decided on the shape of the guard that I liked. Just kind of a cross between something that would be on like a katana or a tanto and a like Bowie style survival knife. And yeah, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take some super glue and I'm going to put some glue on here, remove this, put some glue on here, and then glue it back into place. So I was at the dollar store and I saw some of this stuff. It's just some non-slip padding, like for your cupboards or whatever. But it's made out of some type of foam. It's nice and soft. It's got a pretty cool texture and design. So I cut out a square of it here, and I'm going to use some contact cement and attach it to the handle. Alright, I used the contact cement to glue that on. And you'll also notice this end cap, or this pommel here. This actually came from a blade tube from Ultra Sabers, and I just happened to have it lying around. And just squeeze it on the end. You could always just make yours out of some 2mm or 3mm or whatever EVA foam, just wrap it around the end. And cut out a little disc for the bottom. But I had this around, so it saves some time. And it looks pretty cool. So I'm pretty stoked on that. Next, I'm going to go ahead and seal this. And to seal this, I'm going to use Mod Podge. Alright, so I already managed to Mod Podge this handle here. I don't need to put it on the plastic, or if you have any plastic or otherwise parts on this, you don't really need to cover it. But I do need to put it on the foam, just so it will seal the foam. Otherwise, the foam will absorb all the paint, and it will be rather brittle from all the dried paint, too. Also got some of the guard. And for the handle, I just, like I say, just globbed it on nice and thick. And for the blade, once this dries, I'm going to Mod Podge this, probably with just 2 coats. But I'm going to make all the brush strokes lengthways to look like metal grain whenever it dries. Alright, I went ahead and sealed the blade, much like I said, doing the brush strokes lengthways. And now I moved on to painting this all black. One uniform black from end to end. And what I'm using for that, I'm not using the airbrush. I'm just using a mixture of Mod Podge and black acrylic craft paint. I'm pretty happy with it so far. I like the way the texturing came out with the brush strokes from the Mod Podge. And it's a nice glossy black from mixing the craft paint with it. Next what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my airbrush here. I'm going to load this up with some Wicked Silver and some 40-30 polyurethane additive. I'm also going to thin this out some. I'm going to put a nice thin layer over the black just on the blade. Alright, so you can see I put a little thicker and a little more heavy on the edges and not so much in the center. And it still retains a lot of its black and a lot of its black look. It's just kind of a transparent overspray to make it look a little more metallic. Alright, next I'm going to use a brush and some of this silver chrome Monomasters and my trusty paintbrush. I'm going to paint the edges along here where it would be sharpened. Alright. I brushed the Chrome Model Masters on it. I concentrated it more here on the edge, and did a little dry brushing on the tip, just to look like some of the black finish had worn off from, Red Hood getting all stabby. Alright, I have masked off the entirety of the blade, everything except for the pommel here. And that's because I want this to be a nice solid red. Go ahead and paint with some Valspar Project Perfect. Do just a couple sprays, it gets a nice dark red. Alright, I really like the way this color turned out. It's got a nice high gloss shiny finish. Really makes the whole thing pop. I thought about doing some dry brushing, but the way the light hits this, I don't feel like it really needs anything past what I've already done to it. So I'm pretty much done with this. I was going to make a sheath for it, but I haven't decided yet whether I want to have it strapped to my calf, like down on my lower leg, or if I want to have it attached to the utility / gun belt. So until I figure that out, I'm not going to make that yet. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. Hopefully this gave you guys some ideas and inspired you to make some new stuff. And hopefully you found this entertaining. And as always, thank you for watching and have a great day.